Hello, I'm Patrick Gallavan, and we as a group did Rugby as our database. Now, our original interests were Rugby, AI, and sports. We use Rugby as a sport. Rugby we use for the team stats and player stats, and then we use AI to predict certain player stats. Now, my first role was doctor. The doctor uses the database to diagnose and treat different player injuries. Some questions the doctor might have are what are the most common injuries and what are the least common injuries. Additionally, a doctor might want to ask what are the rehabilitation times for certain injuries and what is the most prevalent injury. Now, to answer the question, what is the most prevalent injury, I use a query that has two subqueries and a main query. The first subquery takes account of all the different players injured by specific injury. Then that goes to the second subquery, which takes the one with the highest injury count, and then that returns it to the user along with the injury ID and the injury type. Now, for my second role, I did owner. The owner uses the database to see and track different player performance and injuries. The owner may sometimes want to look at the predicted output of tries a player might do in a certain season. What a try is like the football equivalent of a touchdown for rugby. Now, additionally, the team owner might want to look at the best try producers for the team, as well as who is injured, and make a decision on who they want to transfer and who they want to trade for. Now, to find the best try producers, I did a subquery to exclude all the players that are currently injured and then return all the players on a specific team that the user inputs for a specific season in 2021. For this example, this will return the player name, player's tries, the player year of that particular season. Now, to optimize this trigger, I use a table access full scan on the player table to get all the player data, which then I use the player stats. I use a table access by row ID using the player ID to get the try information, for example. Additionally, I optimize the subquery to search by the index, which is injury ID. Now, for the derived data triggers, I had two triggers that were before insert and before update. This is to make the point difference for the different games inputted into the system. When it was first inputted, of course, you would put in the points for and the points against, and then the points difference would be updated by the difference between those two. And then I implemented before update because, say, after each game, a team wants to update their points for and points against, they could use this in order to do that. And this gave them many different usabilities in those two cases. Now that ends my part. I will pass it on to you, Carlos. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Patrick. I appreciate it. I'm just going to talk about the views, which is something that we use as a group, and it was a very useful tool. So essentially what it is that whenever you have a long query, a triple join that you need to use, you save that query into the view, and then that you call on the view, and the query gets executed right away. It's a very efficient way to work around your way from writing it down. So a vocab, because I just want to say something about that because I didn't know what try bonus was. So essentially, it's a 4 consecutive try, and in a row, that's considered a try bonus. And a try is whenever a player from the other team gets in the goal area of the other team with the ball. That's considered a try, and that's around 4 points, 4 to 5 points awarded, depending on the league that you're playing. So we have roles. So essentially, scouting manager is getting the player stats, getting the new player name, the new player ID. That's the way he interacts with the database. And the coach, on the other hand, is train and develop his main responsibility is to train and develop the current players, and then holds the team accountable, right, by having the stats, that data available to him. I'm going to talk about the two triggers that I implemented it. So the first trigger is essentially if the person, whoever is inputting the new team into the database, if that person forgets to put the name of the team, the trigger gets activated. So that's especially used for the coach because he needs to know who gets added to the. He needs to know who gets. He needs to prepare who's the team he's going to be playing against, right? And the scout, on the other hand, that every player, the trigger that for every player that gets added into the database, it has to be in a team associated with that player. So that's specially used for the scout manager. Those are the triggers. That's the query optimize. That's the query that I wanted to optimize, as you can see. This is a query explain plan table. So we have a table access full in the player table. We have 240 tables, rows access. And the player stats table, we have, because we're using a player ID, which is a key, that's a more efficient way to access the rows. So that's why it's more efficient. So we have this scout, so show the player with the highest number of tries and player names. So the way I optimized it was because I used the select max tries instead of using the limit. So if there's more than one player with a lot of with the same number of tries, then that's the way I can access that player. And then we have a coach. So a coach essentially he gets the names that have not scored conversions. So the way I use is more efficient is because I use distinct. And thank you so much. That's my time. I'm gonna pass it on to Evan.
Thank you, Carlos. So to meet our database's requirements, we created 5 different tables. Along with these tables holding information on the player's stats and injury records, it also holds AI statistics. AI statistics are AI-generated statistics that are based on a player's past performance and predicts how they will do in the future. This incorporates AI into our database. One individual we have is the statistician. The statistician uses the database to evaluate players based on their stats, and particularly their AI stats, to determine which players are better and which players are worse. Some of the questions he might have are, who are the players with the most amount of AI tries and have scored at least 10 points in the past? In the last year, which player has at least 10 points, 5 tries, and 1 conversion? And who's the player with the highest number of total combined AI tries and AI conversions? To answer that first question, we wrote a query that uses the max of a count of the AI tries. This finds the player with the highest number of AI tries in the database. Along with that, we have another condition that has the player has to have scored at least 10 points in the database. In terms of optimization, this query is currently doing a table access full on the player stats table, but could be made more optimal making an index on the AI tries attribute. This would make it do an index range scan and a table access by row ID on the player stats table. The next individual we have is the match official. So the match official uses the database to see how many penalties and AI penalties each player has, and that can help him officiate games in the future, helping him determine which players require more scrutiny during a game. Some of the questions he might have are, what is the average number of penalties committed by players on the Harlequins and Saracens? Amongst those players, what is the total number of combined AI penalties? And who are the players on the Harlequins who have 2 years in the system who have committed 0 penalties? To answer that last question, we use a double join because the team stats, the player stats table, and the player table are all necessary to accomplish this query. Along with that, 3 different conditions have to be met. The player has to be on the Harlequins, have 2 seasons in the database, and has committed 0 penalties throughout his time in the database. So for our logging triggers, we created 2 different triggers, an insert and an update. These log when a player is updated or inserted into the player table, and it also logs who made these changes. This is useful because it keeps track of who is making changes to the database and at what time. And if someone made a mistake, they can be corrected on their change to the database. And if someone is accessing the database that isn't supposed to, they can be determined and help keep the database safe. That is all we have. Thank you for listening.